G'day and welcome back to the channel. On this episode we are back working on the Morris Minor engine, and today we're going to finish the disassembly of the engine before we send it away to get machined. Alright guys, so we're in the car at the moment and we are heading to Nepean Boltmaster. We need to get some new bolts for the bell housing, but also some bolts to use the adapter plate for the engine stand to adapt it to the engine. Now, they're only 5/16 UNF bolts, but I need them to be about 85mm long because the tube in which the engine adapter is, I think it's about 55 to 60mm in length. So I need something that's going to be quite seriously long. Now remember, even though it is a very small bolt, it is going to be able to hold it. And same with the A series engine. When I did the engine adapter plate for Minisport, it does look like it's, you know, quite small and they're going to break, but it's designed to hold it. So it's shared over the load of all the different bolts. So we're also going to grab some washers while we're there, some really big flat washers. That way we have something for it to butt up against and it's not going to slide through the engine support. I'm probably going to just grab a couple extra bolts while I'm there. Pretty much anything that I'm going to be touching on this, any bolts I remove, I think it's just worthwhile replacing for, you know, not only the look of it, but also just for longevity. And it's good to replace bolts that you've used simply because you don't know how long they've been in there for. You might put one back in, might have a bit of a dicky thread, and then before you know it, it strips it, and then you're up the creek, then you got to pull the engine back out to tap one out. So I'm just going to replace them. Now, I also did some investigating on this last night, and it turns out this is a very early model Morris Minor engine. This is called the MM, so the Mike engine, or millimeters I guess. So this was one of the first engines that came out in the Morris Minors. After I think about 1954, it then changed to the A series engine. So the A series, as most people know, is mounted in the classic Minis and other vehicles as well. So it's interesting because I've been looking for the water pump and I can't actually see one on the car. Now there's a couple of differences as well, and a lot of people I've spoken to about this don't know too much about it. Even Colin at Sprite Parts has even raised an eyebrow at it. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can find parts, which it shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be a drama. I should also note that this is a 918 engine. They came out with a 848cc and they came out with a 948cc engine. So it really just depends, but there's things online you can do with working out what engine you've got in a car, you know, what model it is, all that sort of jazz. So I did a bit of investigating last night before I went to bed. Turns out that's the engine I've got. So I've got probably the one that's probably less likely to be as popular because it was one of the very first engines that they released in there. Not only that, but looking at the Morris Mini 850 that I did a little over 12 months ago, you know, that was a very early generation Mini. So you do occasionally see these sort of things, and you really got to be prepared to be able to find and look for stuff. Sometimes it is quite hard to be able to find particular bits of gear for particular vehicles, but you just got to know where to look and who to speak to about it, and really just invest in some time. And you know, if it's really difficult to find parts for particular things, then that's when you got to make the call, and just to say, well, you know, is it worthwhile me keeping this? You know, I might be spending, you know, way more on the budget than what you'd anticipated because the parts are so rare. So yeah, really explore as many avenues as you possibly can when you're searching for these things, but also don't give up hope. You know, do a lot of research and work out exactly what you need and where you can get things from. Alright, so we've just gotten out from the bolt shop and I got a heap of bolts in a bag. So essentially I'm going to replace all the bell housing bolts to begin with, and I did get some longer bolts as well to use on the adapter plate. Now the adapter plate as well, it is quite a large opening, and being such a small bolt as well, you do have the risk that the bolt is going to fall through there. So what I've done is just grab 4 really large washers, and that'll just help prevent it sliding all the way through. And I've got a couple of spring washers there as well. So let's go home. We need to mount the adapter plate to the engine and then put the adapter plate on the engine stand, and then we can continue disassembling and then head out to go see Colin at Sprite Parts. Alrighty folks, welcome back. So we've had a couple of developments happen in the last probably hour or so since you last saw me. Last seen was me driving home with the bolts that I got from the bolt shop. Now, there has been developments since then regards to this engine, and essentially what we've decided is we're going to change engines completely. Now, let's just go back and have a bit of a chat about that. So why are we changing engines? Well, simply because the engine that we have at the moment is a 918cc. This is the unicorn, it is the hen's teeth engine for a Morris Minor. Now, they came out with several different varieties. They came out with a 848cc, a 918cc, and they also came out with a 948cc, which was an A series engine, as well as a 1275, I believe, but I think that was just a mod that people do. So essentially, what we've decided to do is change to a 948cc engine. Now, you're probably wondering, why is that? Why don't you just reuse the one that you've got at the moment? Well, I've been speaking with, and I apologise, I'm adjusting the camera. I've been speaking with Colin from Sprite Parts. Essentially, he has advised me that because this is a side valve engine, we can't get the amount of power out of it that we can from an A series engine. So originally this engine came out with about 35 brake horsepower, and we could probably get 38, maybe 39 out of it. So for the several thousands of dollars it's going to cost to be able to get those modifications, it's not really worth it. We might as well just use this thing as a boat anchor. So not only that, but also the engine and gearbox combination is particular to this vehicle, and there aren't a lot of parts available for this sort of engine. So because of that, it makes it quite hard to determine if we go down this avenue and we start spending money and finding parts. We don't know if we're going to be paying through the nose to be able to find these parts, to be able to get them, to obtain them. Hell, they might not even be available. They might have to be bespoke parts. They might have to custom make pistons and a camshaft for it. You know, we might be paying, you know, hundreds or even thousands of dollars for parts. So we decided, for what it's worth, it's better to just get another engine and gearbox combination and make it work. So Colin at Sprite Parts has another engine and gearbox combination in which we're going to go purchase. We are then going to bring the engine back to my workshop. We are going to strip the entire thing down to take everything off that he wants. We're then going to send it back to him. We are going to get him to do all the machining. We'll get him to outsource it. He's going to supply us all the parts, everything we need to be able to make it work. Then we're going to bring it back to the workshop. I'm going to reassemble it. I'm actually going to get him to build me the gearbox for it. So the engine and gearbox combination came out of a car just recently, because the customer wanted to upgrade to a 1275 because they live in the mountains and there's quite a lot of steep hills, and quite frankly they said they just can't get up them. So we're going to pull the engine apart. We're going to get some serious power out of this. So we go from about 38 brake horsepower from this standard 948, and we're going to be able to get to about 72, maybe even 74 horsepower. So almost double, well over double what the original engine had to begin with. So that's the plan. We'll go get the engine, we'll bring it back, we'll strip it, we'll take it back to him. Once it's ready for collection, we'll then go back, pick it up, rebuild it. I'll get him to rebuild the gearbox, and in the meantime, we'll finally finish the 1275 IGs that I've got sitting in there at the moment. So it's a little bit dicking around, it's a little bit of back and forth, to and fro, but at the end of the day, this is going to be the most advisable option. And I rang the customer, he was more than happy to invest the extra money into it. So there's a couple of little modifications we need to do to be able to make the engine fit. We need to notch out a bit of the cross member where the gearbox sits, so that's not a drama. So we notch it out and then we just reinforce it. So we've got a bit of welding and fabrication to do. So I'll probably get one of my mates to come around and help me do that if I don't think I can do it. And then we need to also modify the tunnel as well. So where the gearbox is going to sit, the actual gear stick is going to be in a different position. So it's actually going to be closer towards the seats than what it is currently by your left foot sitting inside the car. So a couple of modifications. It's nothing dire. It's not like we're, you know, hacking up the roof and changing everything. But yeah, there's going to be a couple of mods that we need to do, which I'm really excited to jump on board and do. So we'll go out there, we'll grab the engine, get him to build the gearbox, we'll bring it back, and then next episode we'll start stripping the gearbox. So it wasn't actually the intended episode that I'd hoped. So at the moment we're just going to drive out to Colin, we'll grab the engine and then have a bit of a chat with him, and then we'll go from there. Alright folks, welcome back. I just went and spent the best part of about 2 hours with Colin from Sprite Parts. Really informative guy, really nice, really down to earth, very, very knowledgeable. I guess anyone of the age of around 70, 75 who's been working on cars for several decades would have the knowledge and experience that you're after, especially when it comes to doing particular jobs to the car, to the engine, the gearbox, the diff, whatever it may be. So, have some news moving forward. We have purchased a 950cc A-series engine. So the idea of this is we are going to take it back to my workshop. We are going to strip it. We are going to, geez Louise, a massive Dodge Ram thing just drive by. Sorry, Dodge Rams in Australia are a new big thing, literally big thing. Biggest thing we have at the moment, or before them, and the GMC and Silverado and stuff is like Hilux, and that's pretty much it. So seeing something massive on the road is quite new in Australia. Anyway, back on track. So with the 950cc, we'll take it back to my workshop, we will strip it. We're going to pull everything apart and we're going to document it all. And then once it's all apart, we're then going to take it back to Colin, and he's going to get all the machining and the parts for us. And then we're going to bring it back to my place and reassemble it. Now, a really cool thing that we're going to do is not only replace the engine, but we're also going to replace the gearbox as well. Now, it's unclear, or I'm unclear, whether we can actually use the original gearbox with an A-series engine, simply because they are a different design. Also, if we were to do it, you'd probably need an adapter plate like you would for many other things. Like when you try to make something work, you generally need like an adapter sandwich plate that goes between the engine block and the gearbox, just so you can make two different surfaces on there with all the correct bell housing, bolt arrangement, all that jazz. So it's a bit like a spacer, I guess. So essentially what he's going to do is he's going to get me a gearbox, he's going to rebuild it, and then we're going to install it. Now when we install it, there's some modifications we need to do. We need to check a couple of different things. The first one is we need to check to make sure it's going to fit. We know it's going to fit, we just need to make some mods to make it fit. So things like making sure that where it mounts is it's properly going to mount. So in regards to the engine bay, we'll probably need to make some custom engine mounts. Maybe it might be on the wrong angle, maybe it'll be too high or too low, so might need to raise it up a bit. So that's number one. Number two is the gearbox. How is that going to mount in the side of the car? The cross member that's in there, is the cross member going to need modification? Is it going to need a box section cut out? Do we need to reinforce it? Do we need to brace it? Another thing we need to consider is where the gear stick is. So at the moment it has like the world's longest gear stick in it, a bit like the Morris 850 that we did. We need to work out where that's going to mount in the tunnel. So where it mounts in the tunnel, I'm more than happy to cut my car up, but when it comes to a customer's car, I want to make sure I have the right person on the job helping me out doing it. So one of my mates is going to help us do that, which would be really nice. So we're going to fab up some brackets and work that out exactly. Now, not only that, but then because we've also changed engine and gearbox, the gearbox is physically longer than the original one. We're adding about an extra foot, so an extra 30 centimeters to the back of the gearbox, which then means the tail shaft from the back of the gearbox to the diff needs to be modified. So there is a slip joint on the back of the gearbox which will enable the joint to slip in and out, but we're probably going to have to shorten that a bit longer. So what we're going to do from here is once we drop the engine back to Colin and he's going to get it machined, he's then going to lend me a empty block, a sump, an adapter plate and a gearbox. Essentially we're just going to test fit it in there. So I'm going to throw it in the car. We're going to work out where things are touching, what the go is to save me reassembling the engine, putting it in the car, and then having to pull the engine in and out 100 times to try and work out where things are going to go, which is really, really kind. So he's going to loan those to us. We're going to work it out, whatever mods we need to make to be able to mount it, bang, we'll make those mods, we'll take that back out when the engine is ready for collection. We'll then pretty much take his empty gearbox, block, sump, adapter plate back to him, pick everything up, bring it back to my place and reassemble it. So it is a bit of back and forth, but in saying that though, he's gonna get this thing absolutely screaming. So it'd be really good to be able to see this car produce well over double the horsepower in which it was manufactured for. Also, things to consider as well, and I was chatting to him about this, is you need to look at things like not only the way the engine mounts, but the cooling system, the fuel system, the exhaust, any additional wiring you may need to do. How is everything going to work? How's everything going to fit in there? Do we need to run an auxiliary fan? Do we need to run another fuel pump? Is there a different version of a carburetor we need to run? So essentially at the moment we're running a 1¼ inch SU, I believe. We are going to run twin SU carburetors, so that's going to be something new to me in regards to tuning. It's not something that I am overly confident with, so it'd be really interesting to see some comments in the section below of anyone who's got twin SUs and any tips and tricks on how to tune them, really, because yeah, I literally know nothing about it. I can tune mine, but then in saying that, there's tuning and getting it running right, and then there's proper tuning where you're getting the correct needle to suit, or the correct jet, should I say, to suit the application. So if you're running a massive cam, you know, with high compression, you're going to be running a different needle compared to, you know, something that's quite standard. So it's going to be really interesting to put in there. Not only that, but the manifold as well. So we're going to have to run a different manifold, both inlet and exhaust, to be able to mount the twin SU carburetors. We also need to work out how the exhaust is going to go. How does that mount? He believes it should just fit, but you never know because it is going to be custom. So we're probably going to have to chop and cut and bend and probably even take it to an exhaust shop to get them to do it. So we'll wait and see what happens there, because it might be something that we are able to do ourselves, or it might be something that we can just send to someone to get them to do it for us. So we'll wait and see what happens there. So that's the news and the channel update. So it is very different to what we originally had planned in regards to how we were going to get this thing up and running and what our original mods were. Essentially, if we'd spent the same amount of money modifying this engine that we currently had, the 918, we're not going to get the same result out of it as what we would with a 950cc. So it's good to know there are options out there, and it's not that much more expensive really to just bang in one of these engines. And he literally had like dozens of these engines hanging around, so it's good to know that, you know, these are certainly reliable, easily accessible, and buying from a reliable person as well is always reassuring. So that's going to be the next step. So I'm going to finish driving home. When we get home, we'll unload the engine. I'll show you guys what it is. We'll get it up on the engine stand and we'll continue on. All right, we're home. Got the engine in the back of the car. Let's have a look. Yeah, she's all strapped in, ready to go. So pretty much same as an A series. Well, sorry, it is an A series. So take this out of the car, literally. We'll put it on the engine stand. Hopefully it should mount up. I really hope it does, because if it doesn't, I'm going to be a little annoyed with the engine stand. And then we will get this thing stripped. We'll get it sent back to Colin. And then after that, yeah, get the assembly going on the Morris Minor. I just spent a little bit of time on IGS trying to get it running. It is running, but not very well. So still got to diagnose that. But at the point now where I'm really getting over it. So I just got to sit down and think about it, talk with some mates, so I get someone to come around and give me a hand to keep tuning it. But next episode, we're going to start stripping this old girl apart and then go from there. So guys, like always, stay COVID safe, and see you right here on another episode of Tomo's Tune Ups.